Welcome to my channel, Midnight Stories. Here you'll find spooky tales that will give you chills. Before we get started, please hit the like button to support me. It helps share the video with more people. I really appreciate it. My name is Everett Clean, and I have lived in Missoula, Montana most of my life. The story I'm about to share happened a few years ago, just outside the city. It's stuck with me ever since, changing the way I see the wilderness I thought I knew so well. I've always loved the outdoors, hiking, fishing, hunting, you name it. I even consider myself a bit of a survivalist. Growing up in Montana, you kind of have to be. The wild land here demands respect and careful planning. But all my skills and preparation were put to the test on what I thought would be a simple camping trip. Before I tell you what happened, let me describe the area. Missoula is surrounded by wilderness that locals call the Rio Rugged. It's a nickname for the endless forests, towering mountains, and hidden valleys around here. It's breathtaking, but also harsh and unpredictable. I've always taken preparation seriously. My garage is packed with camping gear, survival kits, and enough food to last for months. I have first aid kits that could impress a paramedic and navigation tools to get me out of any forest. But even with all that, sometimes nature throws surprises you can't plan for. This story begins in late August when my friend Nolan reached out to me. We've known each other for years, since college. Happy birthday. I studied environmental science, and Nolan was working toward a business degree. After we graduated, I stayed in Missoula, working as a park ranger and wilderness guide, while Nolan moved to Seattle to chase a corporate career. Even though we live in different cities, we've stayed close, and that's how this trip came to be. Nolan would often call me, complaining about the stress of city life and how much he missed our college days. During one of those calls, he brought up an idea. "Ev," he said, his voice crackling through the phone, "I need to get out of this concrete jungle. Remember that secret fishing spot you told me about? Think you could take me there?" I paused. The spot he was talking about was deep in the backcountry, far from any marked trails. It wasn't the kind of place you'd take someone without serious outdoor experience. But Nolan was determined. "Come on, man, I need this," he pleaded. "I want the real wilderness. No tourist spots, no fancy campsites, just raw nature." Maybe it was the desperation in his voice, or maybe I missed the thrill of an adventure myself. Whatever it was, I agreed. And that's how it all began. A simple camping trip with an old friend that turned into something I'll never forget. A trip that made me question everything I thought I knew about survival, nature, and the things that move in the shadows when night falls. I had no idea that everything I knew about survival would be tested on what I thought would be a simple camping trip. But before I get into the scary details, let me tell you about the land we're dealing with. Missoula, Montana is surrounded by what we locals call the Rio Rugged. It's a nickname for the huge wild wilderness around the city. Picture thick forests stretching endlessly, towering mountains that seem to touch the clouds, and hidden valleys that few people have ever seen. It's breathtaking, but it can also be brutal and unforgiving. I've always believed in being prepared. My garage is packed with the best camping gear, survival tools, and enough dried food to last for months. I've got first aid kits that would impress any paramedic, and navigation tools that could guide me out of the deepest jungle. But sometimes, no amount of preparation can save you when nature decides to throw a surprise your way. It was late August when my old friend Nolan gave me a call. Nolan and I go way back to our college days. I studied environmental science and he went into business. After graduation, we took different paths. I stayed in Missoula, working as a park ranger and wilderness guide. Nolan moved to Seattle to climb the corporate ladder. Even though we lived far apart, we stayed in touch. Nolan would call me often, complaining about city life and missing our college adventures. One day during one of those calls, he brought up an idea. "Ev," he said, his voice crackling over the phone, "I need a break from this concrete jungle. Remember that secret fishing spot you told me about? Think you could take me there?" I hesitated. The spot he was talking about wasn't easy to get to, and it was deep in the backcountry, far from any marked trails. Not a place for beginners. But Nolan wouldn't take no for an answer. "Come on, man," he said, almost begging. "I need this. I want the real wilderness experience. No tourist spots, no comfy campsites, just the wild, raw nature." Maybe it was his tone, or maybe I just missed the thrill of adventure. Either way, I agreed. And that's how it all started. A camping trip with an old friend that turned into a nightmare I'll never forget. A trip that made me question everything I thought I knew about survival, nature, and what might be hiding in the dark. I want the full wilderness experience, Nolan insisted. No tourist trails, no fancy campsites, the real deal. Maybe it was the way he pleaded, or maybe I was craving adventure myself. Nostalgia from our college days played a part too. Whatever the reason, I found myself agreeing. All right, I said, but you better be ready for some serious hiking. This won't be a walk in the park. Over the next few weeks, we got to work planning. I sent Nolan a list of must-have gear, reminded him to check his vaccinations, and gave him a crash course on wilderness survival through video calls. He soaked up the advice, eager to learn everything he could. Congratulations, said Nolan. The day before we left, I did my final gear check. Tent, sleeping bags, water purifier, first aid kit, emergency beacon, bear spray. Everything was ready. I also packed my hunting rifle. It wasn't hunting season, but deep in the wilderness, it's smart to have extra protection. As I zipped up my backpack, my wife Laura walked into the garage. She's always supported my outdoor adventures, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Are you sure about this, Ev? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. Taking Nolan out there? He's not exactly the outdoorsy type. I nodded, understanding her concern. I know, I said, but he needs this. And hey, maybe it'll be good for him to get a little dirt under his nails for once. Laura gave me a small smile, but I could tell she was still uneasy. Just be careful, okay? Laura said softly. That area you're heading to, it's pretty remote. Always am, I assured her, pulling her into a hug. We'll be back before you know it, with plenty of fish and stories to tell. If only I had known how true her words would be. If only I had paid attention to that uneasy feeling deep in my gut. But, as they say, hindsight is 20/20. The next morning was crisp and clear. A perfect Montana summer day. I picked up Nolan from the airport, and we headed straight for the trailhead. As we drove, I couldn't help but notice how out of place he looked. His hiking boots were spotless, his backpack still had the price tag on it, and he was wearing a button-up shirt that looked more like something for a casual office day than a backcountry trek. You sure you're ready for this? I asked as we pulled into the parking lot at the edge of the wilderness. Nolan grinned, his excitement hard to miss. Born ready, Ev. Let's do this. We shouldered our packs and set off. The first few miles were easy, following a marked trail through towering pine trees and across clear, bubbling streams. Nolan kept talking nonstop, pointing out every bird, flower, and rock, like a kid seeing the outdoors for the first time. It was actually kind of nice, seeing the wilderness through fresh eyes. As we hiked, I filled him in on the basics, pointing out edible plants, showing him how to spot animal tracks, and explaining how to respect the land.